I've always felt that our role in a senior's life is to enable enable them to live independently and to have access to choices. There's there are five principal things that a senior housing operator or community can do to facilitate a senior's independence. The first is simply the dietary side, to give them choices to eat when they want to eat what they want to eat, to have a healthy balance, but all at their choice. But how they eat and how they get their nutrition is a key to strength and activity from that standpoint. And so that's an important piece of what we enable. Another area that we enable is physical fitness. We constantly have programs available to the seniors that live with us to frankly build their strength and to maintain their fitness. I mean, the difference for an 80-year-old between walking with a walker or walking independently oftentimes is as simple as whether they have access to programs that can allow them to exercise during the course of a day. So, between dietary and fitness, those are two important elements. A third, which is also important, is how easy it is in a community to find a diverse area of intellectual stimulation and growth. And so that's why, for a lot of operators like Merrill Gardens, we place so much emphasis on the quality and diversity of activities that we set out in the building to deliver, where residents have a choice of selecting not only the type of activity, but if they want to engage or not. A fourth, which everyone tends to think about, is the quality of the assistance or the care that occurs in the community. And that's very important for those seniors, whether it's something they're planning for and want to make sure is there and accessible to them, or whether it's something that they use periodically, or whether they have a need for a longer term access to some care programs that are important to them. But I think the most important element that we enable that truly affects a senior's life is as basic as socialization, the ability to make connections, the ease with which you can make connections, the degree to which those connections oftentimes turn into new friends. And the reality is that if I take those five things, dietary, physical fitness, intellectual stimulation, care, and socialization, those are the five pillars of determining the quality of a senior's life or their sense of comfort that they are living their later years the way they want to live them, with energy and stimulation and friends. And I look back on the pandemic, and I think as a country, all of us for a period of months experienced to some degree the isolation that can occur without stimulation, without socialization. And it's tough. I think that's a little bit of looking at life in aging for seniors as they begin to experience challenges, loss of a spouse, loss of friends, some difficulty driving potentially. And most seniors, when they choose to live in their home, are making a decision to live with what's familiar rather than necessarily making a choice to live an engaging, active life that, when they come to a senior housing community, is basically there for them to choose from. It's there, it's a commitment that we make. And the difference is when you choose to live at home by yourself, even though you're living in a familiar environment, to get to those five pillars that make your life and your independence stronger, you, as your senior, living sometimes alone, sometimes as a couple, have to enable or generate all of those activities, which, when you come to a senior housing community, you merely have to select from because they're there and ready for you to choose from without having to plan for it on your own. Not right for everybody, but certain for a majority of seniors who find that there are challenges as you get older.
Well, you're providing them options, and you're right. It may not all of the activities are for everybody. but you have options and it lends itself the environment for them to thrive and to grow and live with a purpose. And I think you mentioned one component, which is making friends. You know what? I sometimes think at any age, it can be difficult as, let's say, a parent, a mom who's been raising their kids, and that's their lives for the longest time, could be 30, 40 plus years. And then you realize at this point, maybe you don't have your spouse anymore. So some may feel that they don't have the skills to make friends. So I think it's wonderful that you have an environment that lends itself for them to do that.
Absolutely. And, years ago, when we first started, we found that a trigger for seniors coming to senior housing was an event. It was either that they lost a spouse, they lost friends, they had a fall, or they had a medical condition that I think became unsettling in that context. And it's changing as senior housing has improved, as senior housing has evolved, to having an event drive you to make a decision, to now seeking out a more active and interesting and social way to live. It's easy to think that living in a senior housing community, you can come down to lunch or come down to breakfast and or dinner and have someone to sit with, meal with, to exchange ideas with. You can have 50 or 100 different people that you can do that with. But what's nice is every community works hard at making sure that you, as a senior moving into a new community, can become a part of that community and meet people with like interests and ideas and like a big party sometimes.
That's great. I was just thinking as you were speaking, although the spectrum of life is that in the later years, let's say call it the later third of life,
Uh-huh.
but we don't want to live as if we are in the later third of life. I rather look at it as this is a continuation and the best of your life, right?
Agreed.
If you're still healthy, independent, you should live that way and not go into a community and feel confined, let's say. But that's the old paradigm. But I'm just excited with the upcoming changes and all the innovations and just everything that you described. So that's really good. Thank you.
Well, it's something that those of us that are in the industry are focused on and committed to. It is amazing being in this industry as long as I have that 20 years ago the comments are still the same as they are today. When we have a senior move in who's been living alone or with a spouse at home and trying to manage all of those elements, how often they will come up and say to us, I I really should have made this decision a long time ago. And or to have an adult child come up and look at us and say, thank you for giving my relationship with my parents back to me. Because instead of having a couple or a single parent looking to the child to help organize their life and to help them navigate problems, now the relationship has changed because our team is there to help a senior navigate some of those elements. So a lot of the conversation moves from between a parent and a child, moves back to what's happening with family, with grandchildren, with events, and away from thinking about organizing care or whether the senior has enough food or enough activity to keep them busy during the day and to be stimulating in that context.
So the conversation is about living and not so much around how we're going to care for mom, how we're
Exactly.
going to adjust our lives to be the caretaker. But now it's all the fun activities that's surrounding them.
Yeah, absolutely. One other comment that speaks to that is I've often had an adult child make the comment to me that since mom or dad, or since they both moved into Merrill Gardens, I'm having a hard time getting them on the phone. I find out that they're either down a bridge or they're off on an adventure, or frankly, they're just too busy to talk to me. And it's the first time in a long time that's happened. And I think that's good. Well, certainly is good for the senior. So,
Yeah. That is awesome. That speaks volumes for your staff and your operation, just everything that your company signifies. That's great.